A non-denominational group of Christians in Northern Ireland founded the 174 Trust in 1983 to build peace and promote reconciliation, especially among youth. Members of Fourth Presbyterian and Old St. Patrick's churches traveled to Belfast in August of 2011 to see 174 Trust's work in action. Let's welcome Reverend Bill Shaw, Director of 174 Trust, along with Reverend John Vest, Associate Pastor for Youth Ministry at Fourth Church. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So Bill, a bunch of people from Chicago show up and they bring some teenagers with them. What does that mean for you and your work in Ireland?
It means a lot of fun.
Well, good.
First and foremost, yeah.
And a lot of driving.
A lot of driving, yeah, but a lot of fun in between. And I give an opportunity for the people that I work with, particularly the young people, to meet young people from Chicago and some of their parents and adults that use our centre to meet people from Chicago. And to gain a different perspective on things as well.
Okay.
So yeah, we had good times.
Could you just give us an overview of what all the 174 Trust is about?
Well, we came into being, as you've said, in the early 1980s, purposely non-denominational, in an area of the city that had suffered the most. Statistically, it's the eye of the hurricane when something like 23-24% of all fatalities during the Troubles occurred within a square mile of the buildings.
That's pretty high.
So again, because of changing demographics in North Belfast, we operate out of what was once a Presbyterian church complex that's now in a Catholic area, 100% Catholic. I took up post in May of 1998, so 13 and a half years in post. When I took up my role, I had to develop and set a direction for the organisation, which had always been involved in peace and reconciliation to a degree, but I said, I realised, I suppose, at a very early stage that had to be our mission.
Okay.
Reconciliation being the heart of God's vision and mission for us as believers.
And did people buy into that?
Pretty much so. It's been difficult in North Belfast because of the division, there's always that suspicion between the communities, and me being from one community working in the other community is a dynamic that's always been interesting, often misunderstood, and sometimes deliberately misinterpreted.
Yeah.
But certainly from my own management's point of view, I mean, they bought into the vision and they would see it as a fulfillment of the original vision of the organisation.
Okay. And what sorts of activities are going on there now?
We run daycare. We've got preschool, after school. There's an Irish language nursery school. There's an AA meeting every day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Saturday nights, the senior citizens have a dance.
Oh, have fun.
And they do have fun. I got youth work, and we have a disability project that caters for the needs of some of the most marginalised people within our society, also some of the most invisible within our society. Kids, teens and adults, we run clubs for them, and we do advocacy work for them with social services, trying to make sure that they're getting the right help from the statutory bodies. And we also work with churches, trying to give them I suppose an encouragement to be involved ecumenically in seeking to tackle the division that's at the heart of our society in Northern Ireland.
John, what have you seen happen at the Trust?
What's really exciting when we bring groups over there and have a chance to see what's happening is to see a group that is mixed in terms of their communities. So Catholics and Protestants together doing something that has nothing to do with conflict or division, but playing a game or going to the beach or doing something like that, having a barbecue, listening to some music. And to me, that's really one of the great things about being there and being able to see what Bill's doing, crossing boundaries, crossing divisions, bringing communities together. Youth
keep coming up. What makes youth special? Why is that an important part of this reconciliation?
Well, from my point of view, given the divisions which are centuries old in Northern Ireland, I've always been convinced that if we can get young people together at as early an age as possible, where they're involved in activities that they're doing together, as opposed to what normally happens where they're segregated at school, in church, in sports. But if we can get them together at early an age as possible, then they become friends. And then those differences, it doesn't mean that they stop being Catholic or stop being Protestant,
right,
but they're put in perspective. And those friendships can overcome those things that would otherwise keep them apart. So young people for me have always been the focus of the work that I wanted to be involved in. And the current group of young people that I have at the Trust are exactly that. They're made up of Protestant, Catholic, either side of one of the main lines of demarcation in North Belfast. So they live a couple of hundred yards apart and wouldn't have met but for the project that they're involved in. And now, after 2.5 years, they're firm friends, and they meet outside of the Trust, and they Facebook and they text and they message each other. And I think life-transforming friendships have been formed and are being developed even as we sit here.
And hopefully community transforming.
That ripples right through, because they go back and they talk to their parents, they talk to their peers, all of whom know that they're involved in a unique project that takes them out, I suppose, out of their comfort zone, but also out of their communities to meet people from the other community. And they do some neat things together as well.
Do you have any stories of how parents have taken lead from their kids?
Yeah, one of the incidents in this past summer, friends of mine came over from Germany just the week before the Chicago group came, and we did a German cook night where the kids were taught by one of the German chefs to cook a traditional Swabian dish.
That sounds like an adventure all by itself.
It was, yeah, and there are fabulous photographs of them literally up to their elbows in meat and dough and mixing it. I'm not sure where their hygiene standards came from, but anyway, they're good fun. But then when they cooked it, their parents came, Protestant and Catholic, together. And there were 3 of the parents from the Protestant community who had never been across the road.
Wow.
Never come across the road, but because they had a specific invite from their children to come and eat, they came.
And be on common ground.
And be on safe ground. And I know for the chef, that made all his efforts and all, I suppose, his angst worthwhile.
In the messy kitchen afterwards.
And the messy kitchen afterwards, yeah. So that was, for me, apart from the trip the Chicago group made, for me that was one of the standout moments of the summer, to see those 3 adults who had never been across the road come and feel safe and go back home with new stories to tell back into their community. So yeah, there are lots of stories. I mean, with the kids that we're involved in, and the stories that they're telling back, to their peers, to their friends, and to their parents.
It sounds very hopeful. John, how does this experience translate into issues for us in Chicago?
Yeah, it definitely does. I mean, Northern Ireland wasn't really on my radar for a long time, and a colleague of mine who served in Belfast as a young adult was with me and Bill and suggested that I should bring a group of youth there. And when we did, it was totally eye-opening for me and for the youth. And what we kept coming back to was, how does this relate to what we experience in Chicago? Mm-hmm. And Chicago is one of the most segregated, divided cities in our country. Our divisions are more about race or ethnicity or socioeconomics, but repeatedly what we've tried to do with the youth that we bring there is to look at what folks in Northern Ireland are doing for peacemaking and reconciliation, and sort of crossing those divisions, and say, as a divided city ourselves, as a divided society, what can we learn from that to work on reconciliation here in Chicago? And the kids really pick up on that, and they get that. And so when they come back, they think about what can we do in our own communities, what can we do in our churches and our neighborhoods to learn about folks outside of where we live, but also to be a part of the reconciliation and peacemaking that needs to happen here in Chicago. With all the youth violence that we have, with all the divisions, there's a lot of work to do.
Well, what a hopeful model to be able to learn from. Thank you to Bill and to John for being here today. I'm Polly Toner for Different Drummers and the Greater Chicago Broadcast Ministries. Keep the faith.